Thanks for being here and for attending for the people that are online. I am Nadine Doiron and I'm presenting with Harper Baldwin. We're both with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, and we'll both be presenting on projects and products in the Bristol Bay region that our office is working on. So as I said, I'm Nadine Doiron and I am with the Office of Coastal Management's, Learning Services Division. And I am a resilience specialist and a program officer for a program called the Climate Resilience Regional Challenge, which is what I'll be presenting on today. I'll be presenting on the three grant projects that have been awarded to Alaska. And I also work with Nisa Russell, who is another resilience specialist. And she really focuses on technical assistance for our grant partners, whereas I focus on technical assistance and I also do the grant management for the projects. But some of you might be familiar with Nisa. She used to work with Alaska Conservation Foundation. She lives in Kodiak, so she couldn't be here with us this week. She has a lot of, family stuff going on with end of fishing season, but I'm happy that I was able to get out here and talk about some of the work that's going on in the Bristol Bay region. So I'll give a brief overview of what the Climate Resilience Regional Challenge is. And I'll probably just start saying CRRC because it's a lot easier and shorter. But the CRRC is a one-time $575 million grant program that was made possible by significant funding provided to NOAA through the Inflation Reduction Act. The goal of the program is to support transformational investments that will strengthen our coasts and our coastal communities in the face of climate change through both planning and implementation efforts. And so these projects were awarded last October. This map shows the locations of our projects, and there were 19 projects that were awarded. And there's two different tracks to the projects. There's track 1 projects, which are somewhat smaller scale planning efforts. And then there's track 2, which is really the on the ground, larger scale projects where they're implementing plans and work that the organization has already been working on for a number of years. Alaska was awarded 3 projects in total. So there are 2 track 1 projects, which are with the Bristol Bay Native Association and then the Nature Conservancy jointly with the Native Village of Igiugig. And there's 1 track 2 project with the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. And I'll talk a little bit about exactly what those 3 different projects are focusing on. Okay. I'll start with ANTHC's project. This is the track 2 project that was awarded to Alaska, and they were awarded $75 million, pretty sizable amount of money. I know, it's kind of crazy. It is the largest amount of money that was awarded of any project in the whole program. So ANTHC is the biggest awardee for the whole CRRC program. The goal of the project is to serve nearly 100 communities in the state that are facing some sort of threat from flooding, erosion, and permafrost thaw. Usually, as we all know, a combination of those 3 things is affecting a lot of communities. So the project focuses on placing technical expertise in the communities all over the state to help these communities conduct risk assessments and support the development of plans and designs for the implementation of resilience projects for them to deal with the risks that they're facing from flooding, erosion, permafrost thaw, things like that. And part of the vision with the project is to transform the landscape of Alaska tribal climate adaptation activities from a state of very limited capacity to a thriving network of practitioners that are making rapid progress ahead of time towards addressing really complex and long-term problems like community relocation, behavioral health, and food sovereignty. And again, like this isn't my work specifically. I'm presenting sort of on behalf of the awardees. I'm their program officer and I provide them technical assistance. But
Good question. Is that Jacqueline Overbeck and Rich Bizarre?
Yeah, they're part of it. So that's one part of the project is their risk assessment program. The It's part of their climate initiatives program, which is run by Jackie Schaefer. And then Max Neal is the PI. He's doing, but yes, the risk assessment program with those two is part of the project. One of the track 1 projects is with the Bristol Bay Native Association, and they were, oh yeah, next one. Thank you. And they were awarded $2 million. So the goal with this project is with grant partners from across the Bristol Bay region. They'll join together in a 3-phase project that aims to establish the Bristol Bay Regional Resilience Collaborative. And this is to coordinate regional climate adaptation planning while prioritizing education, action, and implementation in the process. They will hopefully build enduring capacity, and they'll integrate climate adaptation into all facets of regional planning, securing a resilient future that sustains the community's natural resources, way of life, and local economies. Originally, Cassandra Johnson was heading up this project, but the goal of the project was to quickly hire a PI, so they have brought on Tess Hostetter, and just recently brought on Randy Madison, who is the program assistant.
Question?
Yeah.
Will this money that's been given to our area here, will that go directly into fixing erosion issues, or is it just for the research into it?
With the Bristol Bay project specifically,
Right.
The Bristol Bay Native Association project is more around planning. So their focus is on creating a group to sort of streamline that process for identifying hazards or like primary concerns for communities, creating plans. But because it's a track 1, it's much more on the like planning and creating the groups and the people that need to be involved for the implementation. Yeah. Whereas like ANTHC has been doing that planning for a long time, and they sort of need the funding to actually start building out the on the ground.
Right. I was just wondering if this went into the engineering of the fixes for the erosion or anything like that.
That would that's like probably an after of this phase of the project. But if they end up, I mean, it's up to them really, again, if they end up wanting to change it down the line.
Just in sync with that, because I had asked the same question of Bristol Bay Native Association, and also an Adelaide Herman's involved in this also. And you know, because again, just there's communities that are fairly well advanced in terms of projects, some engineering designs, and what's hard is to find actual money to implement, to get stuff fixed. And so it was a little vague talking to BB&A whether part of the funding that they're receiving would also focus on here's potential funding opportunities. So that's point 1. And then it's really unclear to me whether they would actually help communities apply for those grant funds. So I don't know if you guys know the answer to that or not.
I think part of their project plan is to come up with ways that this work can be funded beyond this. So these are 5-year grants. They have 5 years to use this funding. And part of their project is to like gather other grant opportunities and resources to help the work that they've planned continue on past that. So once they have established more of a centralized like group to coordinate efforts like that, that group can also provide funding resources for individual
Which
communities.
is helpful. And
But it wouldn't come out. It wouldn't
It
come
wouldn't
out
come
of the
from this
75 million.
And
Nissa just jumped in the chat and said BB&A will be focusing in years 4 and 5 to support communities to identify funding opportunities. For implementing projects identified in the planning stages. They're also working to build out the needed experts, quote unquote, who can help expedite those timelines if that is what a community needs. I was just reading because I thought it might be hard to read.
Yeah, I can't see it even with my glasses on. But the other thing too, I mean, because and I'm just going to be a little bit of the devil's advocate here, because I think sometimes these questions over the years you've had other organizations such as EPA, and here's all these countries, and which ones require a match, which ones are tribally, whether there's tribal set aside and so forth. So it's one thing to identify all these potential grant opportunities. It's another if you're a small village, and your capacity is somewhat limited to actually.
Have the time to apply and.
Well, and yeah, I mean, all these grant applications can be so different and overwhelming. So again, it's not clear to me whether, Tess, now you've got Randy back, don't know what their grant writing skills are like, and it's going to be down the road when they identify potential grant opportunities, but providing technical assistance preparing the grant proposals is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So again, I mean, I'm glad this is going on, but I'm just raising that issue because there's a huge need for that.
Yeah, and they are like some of these projects because of capacity levels have been like a little slower to start than I think initially anticipated. It took them almost like 6 months to hire Tess. So once they finally got that primary person to lead the project, they've had her for almost like 6 months now.
They had a fire.
Yeah. But I can look through their proposal more thoroughly, but Nisa, who's my colleague, looks like she probably has her proposal up, is what I'm saying. I was able to see that in years 4 and 5, they do plan on maybe it's a database or providing some sort of guidance to the individual communities in the area for applying to different funding opportunities past this 5 years, and applying for actual money that can be used for implementing projects for on the ground work. And I'll talk about some of the technical assistance that NOAA is providing for this project after this, but things like creating these databases are things that NOAA can help with, creating guidance or helping like Tess and Randy or whoever is involved in these projects with training on how to write grants. If they need help they want to create their own sort of small like training or information for communities on how to keep track of grants, apply for grants, things like that. That's something we are like trying to offer to our awardees, is trying to actually help them with their goals, provide them training, provide them resources throughout the 5 years to get their work done.
And I think that's all good. And my last comment is because again, I predominantly work with Chigney, and for a lot of the projects where it's infrastructure related, you need preliminary engineering reports. So all those are important steps, but they're also expensive to get done. So, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions and comments. I'll just quickly talk about the last track 1 project, which is with the Native Village of Igiugig and the Nature Conservancy. So Igiugig chose the Nature Conservancy to be the primary awardee to do a lot of the administrative work for them, so that the folks in Igiugig themselves could focus on the ground work and the work that they're doing in their region instead of having to do a lot of the grant management and the administrative work. So we worked with both KNC and folks at Igiugig on this. But the focus of this is to expand current community-based monitoring efforts in Igiugig and then share lessons learned and approaches taken with nearby tribal communities. The focus is around creating a regional guardians network, which is based off of Canada's Indigenous Guardians program. The focus is on investing in their communities, expanding training opportunities for residents, and uplifting local and Indigenous knowledge with regards to land relationship planning practices in their area. Again, it's administered by TNC, but the project leads are Mary Hofstetter and Bill Kane in Igiugig. And so both of these track 1 projects are really focused on building capacity in the Bristol Bay region, and they hope to build continued project and success even after of the funding. So now we can talk a little bit more about that technical assistance aspect I brought up. NOAA's making considerable efforts compared to the past to support awardees throughout the duration of their projects by providing support and technical assistance. We try to keep the definition of that really broad so that we can meet the different needs of different organizations and areas. But some examples can be like matching and collecting data, tools, training, and bringing in subject matter experts. So each region has 2 dedicated technical assistant staff. For Alaska, that's me and Nisa. And I can just give some examples of some of the assistance that we've started working on. For 2 of the projects, they've identified wanting training for trauma-informed engagement for their local communities. So we're working trauma-informed engagement. So we're working with the Adaptive Mind Project on putting together training for them so that they can go into communities and have more of a positive impact for people who have dealt with some really scary, like climate-related issues in their area, and be more effective and responsible with working with
This is with the mining projects, but what you're saying, is any of that specific to Bristol Bay?
Yeah, the people that have requested are in Bristol. So the Bristol Bay Project and ANTHC have asked us to help them with finding that kind of training for them.
For the trauma training?
For their team. We're also working with people like the Alaska Regional Climate Services Director, who is Jessica Cherry for NOAA, to create trainings on how climate data and climate reports like the IPCC can be used in this work, and how those things are created, and how they are relevant and important in Alaska, and what data you can actually be pulling out of that for your adaptation planning. So we also, while we can work on creating custom trainings like this, we also provide the existing trainings from NOAA that partners can take advantage of. So 2 partners from one of the projects are traveling down to Washington soon to take an adaptation planning for coastal communities training with some of the projects in California and Washington. So yeah, there's a lot of different types of technical assistance we're looking to provide. We try to keep it really vague in terms of defining it so that we can sort of justify meeting any of the needs that the projects bring up. But
again, no engineering assistance like for our problem here with the sewage stuff in shoreline here. We can't get engineering assistance to figure out what the solution is.
Yeah.
Or can that be funded through this program?
That would be up to the Bristol Bay Native Association project lead.
So it could be used to get engineering.
It doesn't really, it's not what their project proposal was approved for. So that would be a pretty big change of scope to start doing on the ground, like actual technical evaluation, like technical engineering evaluations. And yeah, so that would be a pretty big change. It would be hard to justify NOAA approving that. If they hadn't approved that originally for this kind of work, to say that they want to switch to an on-the-ground remediation project would be pretty big change.
And I think BBNA, although they are a singular tribe and they have many, I don't think, even though that we work with them quite closely, Dillingham does not fall under them.
Oh, within BBNA itself?
Correct.
The city of Dillingham did get a grant for doing some kind of erosion abatement for that area, though.
And I forget your name.
Chris.
Are you the city or the school? So just keep in mind, and Patty can, has access to that, certainly Harper. But UAF, with grad students over the years, there's been a tremendous amount of erosion monitoring that's been conducted, a lot of data, and, again, some projections, and I think Harper's going to be going over that later. So, again, useful information, but it, and in the years past, we also talked about, is there a way to get youth above a certain age involved and rolling up their sleeves so that they can learn hands-on and get some basic, so that there's that educational outreach. But again, there's been an incredible amount of data collected and, over the years, and sure we'll be launching into that later.
It's not really in the scope of this presentation
Oh.
since but yeah,
Okay.
thank you. But I do
That's
have
what
some
I'm
numbers
saying.
on the erosion here from some of my graduate work essentially. And yeah, but that's not really within the scope of these.
But and at some point, we want to make sure we have the way to access that report, just, so
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
sorry for getting distracted here.
No, it's okay. It's better to have discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Harper.
I realized maybe I'll take the guy hand. Oh, thanks Nadine for talking about the sort of the projects that some of the projects that our office is working to implement in the region. And now I'm going to basically give an example of what Nadine was talking about on her last slide of the technical assistance. So I'm a geospatial analyst with the Office for Coastal Management, but I work specifically on Alaska projects. So I'm sort of regional expertise for Alaska. I've been in Dillingham a few times doing erosion monitoring for my master's work, which is how I got into coastal monitoring and coastal hazards in Alaska. And so I work with Dana Brown, who's the Alaska Regional Geospatial Coordinator. So we kind of work together to help create more tools that Alaskan end users can access and that actually have data. So our Digital Coast team has provided 80 tools for users to understand coastal hazards in their region, but a lot of them don't actually have data in Alaska yet. We're filling some of those data gaps. We're getting good elevation data sets so that we can fill these gaps in Alaska, but it's kind of slow. And so Dana and I are really working to find new data sets, bring them into our tools, and provide technical assistance so that people on the ground can use these tools and understand coastal hazards. So that's me and Dana. Billy and Doug are kind of in charge of the main tool that I'll be talking about today, which is the sea level rise viewer, which you can see on the little flyers in front of you. It has a QR code if you want to take a look at that when you get home too, or now on your phone. So they put in a lot of work to expand this tool to Alaska and to create this tool for the entire contiguous United States as well. So take a look at the time, see how we're doing. So I said the Digital Coast is a website that's publicly available. Doesn't cost any money. You can access it on a web browser. And it has over 80 tools to help folks understand coastal hazards in their community. Not all of those have data for Alaska yet. So I'm going to be focusing on really the sea level rise viewer, but I do want to touch on the data access viewer as well, because that is a useful tool for folks. We also have an Alaska Resources webpage that details where you can find baseline data sets, information about flooding and inundation, sea level rise information, erosion, and tsunami information as well. So this is a good kind of catch-all that our office has put together to help folks who have questions about coastal hazards and what data is available in Alaska specifically, because it is so different.
Yes, a quick question. So tidal gauges, does that pertain to sea level rise?
It does.
Okay, and then just keep in mind, going back to UAF, Chris Mayo and others, there, and then just, I can't remember your name, sir, but Chris, there was tidal days, tidal gauges, here in Dillingham. It's been a long time since. But anyways, so would that kind of data be on?
Absolutely.
Like if somebody Googled that webpage, would they get the data from that? Which is kind of collected?
Yeah, once again, so, Dana and I work to understand what data is available for Alaskan coastal end users, and that includes other NOAA products. The tides and currents, which is the tidal gauge page, is not managed by our office, but we have lots of links to that data. So you can find it there. We've basically amassed this web page that details where you can find things for Alaska specifically, because it is different. It's less streamlined than in the rest of the United States, because everything's kind of come on a bit piecemeal as we're trying to service the state and expand where we have instrumentation and data sets. So that's the best, I would say that's the best place to go. And yeah, if folks want to write down that link. It's a little hard to find. We're working on that issue, but I would recommend writing down or taking a picture of the link because that's the best way to get to it. Yeah, I'll wait there for a second. And if you find anything on there that is wrong or a link that doesn't work, anything like that, please email Dana or I. Our emails will be on the last slide again. We work to update that website. So we'd love to find an error and fix it. So I said I was going to talk about the data access viewer. So this is one of our tools and it houses imagery, elevation, and land cover data sets that are both produced by our office, but also produced by other people. So it's not a complete repository of imagery, elevation, and land cover data sets in Alaska, but it is a pretty good compository for the coastal areas. And as you can see, this is actually some land cover of Dillingham. So that's publicly available. There's some restrictions on the data, but it is generally publicly available. If you have any questions about that data and how to access it, again, please send us an email. We're really happy to put together maps or to help end users be able to access that. But the big data set that I'm going to be talking about today is elevation. So that's elevation data sets power the sea level rise viewer. And so any place that you can see sea level rise viewer data means that we have a really high resolution elevation data set for that area. And it is available on the data access viewer. So if you're looking at Good News Bay and you see that we have sea level rise viewer there and you want to have that elevation data set yourself, you can go onto the data access viewer and download it to have in your own GIS.
Question, are you working with communities and their GIS specialists to obtain their actually already documented sea level 32 feet above or equal, or are you doing that?
We're not aware of those data sets, so I would love to hear more about what you're describing and how we could potentially work with folks. That, again, that's my job, is a lot of technical assistance. And so if there's something that, you know, we could learn from other folks who are already doing GIS work in their communities and help to sort of bring that into our existing tools and make that more actionable data set, that would be interesting.
Keep in the back of your mind that my understanding is that Bristol Bay Native Corporation, the for-profit regional corporation, they've been doing GIS training, and also linked to SAVIC and
Yeah, we're really interested in you know, providing technical assistance for those GIS practitioners in Bristol Bay and throughout the state. If folks have, you know, the expertise and want to take a look at these, want to download them and want to know how to create maps, we're really available to talk through with folks and provide technical assistance.
My last question, can you get elevation data from drone imagery?
Yeah. That's not, we require, so for the sea level rise viewer, we require LiDAR data sets, which are more high resolution and more accurate. And you can also get a bare earth surface with a drone. You're getting just the highest surface. So if you have vegetation, you actually are getting the height of the vegetation instead of the height of the ground. But those data sets can still be really useful for mapping certain hazards.
And again, you guys have access to this, but on the, you know, the community database for Chicknick Bay, you know, because part of the Lake and Penn Borough, there's one line item, one line where it talks about Lake and Penn Borough is doing LiDAR, whatever the correct language is. So keep that. Yeah, it's not here in Dillingham, but that is going.
Yeah, I'm somewhat aware of that data. I'm not sure where that is in production at this point, but once that comes out, we will, you know, the next year it'll go into the sea level rise viewer, and we'll have that available on the data access viewer as well. Yeah. So the sea level rise viewer is a web mapping tool. You can open it. Sorry, that's okay. You can open it on your browser at home, and it's a screening level tool to help understand what kind of impacts you might see from sea level rise in your area. And it can also be used to sort of crudely assess how inundation would potentially from like a flooding event would affect your region as well. So it's not a hydrodynamic model, it's just a bathtub model, which means that it's just elevation. If a point on the ground is below the elevation that you're trying to view, then it'll show inundation. There's better ways to map flooding with hydrodynamic models, and there are other folks working on that within the state. But in the absence of those hydrodynamic models, this is a good, again, screening level tool to understand how flooding might affect your community. So the tool is nationally consistent and allows you to visualize potential impacts, and you can also download this data. So that's one of the powerful ways that folks can use these tools. So like I was saying, the source data for the sea level rise viewer are high resolution LiDAR data sets. And if anyone has questions about LiDAR, feel free to ask, but it's a little in the weeds, so I might not go down that path.
Is there anywhere we can go and view LiDAR maps? Yes.
Within the data access viewer, you can actually, if it's a LiDAR map, you can click on 3D. It's called Pottree. If you're interested, Pottree. It's one of the buttons at the bottom of the download page, and you can actually kind of like fly through and see, because LiDAR is these 3D images that have multiple sensors, so you can see like, oh, this is a tree, and here's the bare earth underneath. So it allows you to kind of fly through like that, which is pretty cool. The data sets that we use for sea level rise viewer are seamless at a 3-meter resolution. That's the resolution that we've deemed possible for mapping the entire country and Alaska. And so it's a little coarse. Again, it's 3 by 3 meters cell size, but we've mapped both 1 meter and 3-meter resolution, and the outcomes are pretty similar. So it's sufficient. They have to be quality level 2 or higher LiDAR. So this is, again, really high resolution data sets. And we edit them for hydro connectivity and vertical consistency. So that looks like editing out bridges so that water isn't stopped by a bridge over a river, and adding in culverts, again, so that you can really see how the water will move up onto the landscape. And it's also powered by NOAA's VData mean high or high water surface. This is something that is not available for the entire state of Alaska yet. It's available in Southeast Alaska, but we're using one of their preliminary models that hasn't been published yet to create these data sets. And VDatum is basically how you tie geodetic heights, so heights on the ground to heights in the water. Where does mean high or high water hit in Dillingham? What is that height if you were to measure it on the ground? So it's a way to tie these two different datums together. So this is where we currently have mapped 0 to 10 feet of sea level rise at half-foot increments in Alaska. And so you can see we have a swath of the YK Delta, Prince of Wales Island, an area of Kachemak Bay, and then a couple little postage stamps further north, such as Point Hope and Teller, and a section of Macoriac as well.
How did you choose where to start mapping?
This was all based on data availability. So far, we've just anywhere that had the data, we mapped. And for the next year, once again, we're just going through and finding anywhere that has the data and mapping it.
So for the communities that are listed, did they initiate doing LiDAR, or is it linked to projects that, anything from mining to who knows what?
Yeah, any data set that was publicly available for us that met our requirements, it was pulled into this. So a lot of this has been collected by USGS, and actually the areas that I'm about to show were contracted by our office specifically. So go forward to that. So this is the update for 2025 that includes a lot of this region of the Bristol Bay region. And we actually contracted all of these AOIs through our office, through internal funding.
So that means LiDAR.
Yeah, and all this LiDAR is actually currently already available on the data access viewer. It's not up in the sea level rise viewer. So if you follow this, it's not ready yet, but it's being processed and it's coming out in the next 6 months or so. So it's not quite available yet, but it will be soon. And the LiDAR data is already available on the data access viewer. And I've actually, for this presentation, I mapped the Dillingham area. So I'll show you some of the outputs from the Dillingham area. But again, that's coming very soon. We're very excited about it. Once again, you can both view this data online and you can download it. You can also, if you're in GIS and you want to access a map service, that's something you're familiar with, we have those as well. And you can also look at our mapping methods. And when you download this, you can download the digital elevation models that we produce that are, again, hydro-connected and vertically consistent to have those edits. Or you can just download 4 feet of sea level rise. What does that look like? That's a layer that I want to look at consistently. So I'm going to download that layer.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So are you currently working with like FEMA and Army Corps of Engineers? And I only ask because I know the Army Corps of Engineers does like the dredging and they have to do the measure the boat harbor as well as immediately outside of the boat harbor, that whole coast area there. Is that something that you guys are doing?
We are in touch with FEMA and we host some of FEMA's tools and vice versa. We work together internally. Our data sets are all on land, so they aren't as relevant for dredging and for like barge movement. That's more, you can get some of that data with LiDAR, but especially here where it's really silty, you typically need sonar to get that data. And that wasn't a part of this data collection.
It was not?
It was not.
But going back to your previous slide where you listed the communities that. Yeah, so that's not water-based. That's just land-based, or maybe I'm getting too.
It's water-based as much as we have mapped a surface of mean high or high water. So it's all based on a mean high or high water surface, but it's not, we didn't do any sonar, any bathymetry calculate or measurements to get these models.
And the only reason I asked about FEMA was the NFIP, because of that program that they they already have some of this information available.
Yeah.
National Floodplain program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the FEMA maps the floodplain, and that's a bit different than what we're mapping here. So we do, again, host some FEMA maps in our tools. We have a tool called the Coastal Flood Exposure Mapper that does show FEMA's maps. And those are useful, but they're sort of more for planning purposes or for insurance purposes, et cetera. And our maps are really just allowing really coastal engineers to take a look at the area that they're working in and see whether infrastructure is at risk and take a look at the best publicly available sea level rise projections and see what that might look like in their community. Tab, if I want to do a little demo of the sea level rise viewer, will my screen keep sharing that?
We'll see.
I'm going to pull this up beforehand. Got that. Looks okay. Just have this.
Should still be shared.
Nisa, can you see her?
Yeah, I can see it.
Thanks, Nisa. Okay, so this is again what we have right now in mapped in Alaska. Sit down. And this will be expanded in the coming year. And I'm going to zoom in up here. So here's what we have mapped for Kotlik at 0 feet of mean high or high water. So all this area that's blue is where we, based on our models, where we think water is at mean high or high water today. But if you were interested in, if you knew there was a flood coming or there was a storm coming and it was probably going to induce a 3-foot flood, again, in the absence of better hydrodynamic modeling, you could come to our tool and click the 3-foot level and see the kind of impacts that 3 feet of inundation would have in Kotlik. And so you see there's some areas that are in blue and there's some areas in green. So the blue areas are connected to the ocean. So that means that we do expect them to become inundated at this level. But the green areas are low-lying areas that are below 3 feet above mean high water, but are not connected to the ocean. So they could flood or they could not. It's a little, we like to highlight those areas because they could flood, but they are not hydro connected. So it depends kind of on water flow. And what that means is like there's a higher elevation area of land between it and the water, right? So
What are the different shades of blue showing us?
that's depth. Yeah. So I think this is one of our updates. Yeah. Soon you'll be able to click and see the depth, like an actual depth, rather than just seeing this gradient. So if you're looking at that, so I just said if there's going to be a 3-foot storm surge, this might be useful. But it might also be, you might be looking for sea level rise and you want to know what level of sea level rise is reasonable for this location. So to understand that, you would click into this local scenarios area. And it's a little funny, you have to click in the grid that you want to see. So I clicked in Kotlik and you can take a look. I'm going to view by scenario. So if we're looking at intermediate high levels of sea level rise or projections of sea level rise based on, this is based on emissions, you know, the emission scenarios of low, intermediate, or all the way up to high. We've projected in certain years what the water levels would be. That makes sense? So I see that in 2080, under an intermediate high scenario, which you can also take a look at whether we're currently following the intermediate high or other scenarios based on water level gauges with a different tool. If folks have questions about that, I can get into that more, but it's a little complicated. We don't have too much time. So in 2080, under the intermediate high scenario, we do expect water levels to have risen to 2.76 feet above mean high or high water in Kotlik. So this is currently, this is a little bit more than what we expect the water levels to be in 2080. In 2100, under an intermediate high scenario, we're almost at 4.5 feet above sea level rise for Kotlik, or above mean high or high water sea level rise in Kotlik. So this can help planners understand whether or not their infrastructure is resilient to the sea level rise that we expect to occur in their location. We also, another big question here is what kind of confidence do we have when we're mapping this? So if you want to know about that, you can click into the mapping confidence tab. And what this is a bunch of blue and orange, right? The blue is areas that we are 80% sure would be inundated under or not inundated under this scenario. We're 80% sure that we have mapped that correctly. The orange areas are where the last 20%, where we're not as sure that they will be inundated or not inundated at the current level. So you can take a look at the various levels and kind of see where we have more or less confidence in these areas. So I think that was all that I wanted to show in the little demo. And now, does anyone have questions about that? No, slideshow again. And take a look at where we've mapped for Dillingham. Oh, let me get. So this entire area, basically from down by the hospital all the way up through sort of the middle of Lake Alechniga up there has been mapped. And you'll be able to zoom in closer to Dillingham when it's in the sea level rise viewer.
So quick question, because again, you've done erosion monitoring out here in years past, and you know where the sewage lagoon is, and that's always been a big issue with respect to, you know, flooding and erosion, et cetera. So this is going to be useful for the city.
Yeah.
Once I know it's going to be on that website. But they could be using that, any engineers they hire, contractors.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's a helpful, again, it's a screening level tool. It will help, engineers get an idea of what these potential futures could look like. Anytime that you're gonna try to actually implement an engineering project, you're gonna want to download our LiDAR data that we contracted the collection for and take a look at that and take, a more in-depth analysis of what is actually occurring, but this is a good high level.
Is it possible to build seawalls and stuff into this program to show where they would affect where water runs to?
Yes, so that's part of the hydro connectivity editing that we do. So in other places where there are levees and seawalls, that is manually edited into the DEM. Yeah, so if that was added, that would just be like an email to me and Dana, and we would let our inundation team know. We would re-edit it, remap it, and put it on our website again. Yeah. Yep. So I did want to just zoom in on one area. Well, for the sewage lagoon specifically, I was talking with Tab about this. It is actually a more high elevation than I thought based on the erosion monitoring that I've done there too. It is actually much higher. So this LiDAR is based on 2023 data. So already it's just such a dynamic environment that it's already it's eroded past where the LiDAR shows it. But fortunately, because there is a lot of elevation relief in that area, it's not really going to flood based on our models. Erosion is really the concern for the sewage lagoon. It's not really going to flood based on our models. So that's good. But I chose to zoom in on Scandinavian Creek inundation. So if you zoom in on Scandinavian Creek, there's this is the mean higher high water surface for that area. So 0 feet of sea level rise is what we're looking at. And then this is 1 foot of sea level rise, not too different. 2 feet of sea level rise, also not too different. And this is, again, 2 feet of sea level rise or 2 feet of inundation from flooding. At 3 feet, if we had a 3 foot flood, 3 feet above mean higher high, you've got some impacts on the road here. So that would impact functionality and ability to get to the barge landing down there. And then 4 feet, even more impact to the road. And I just went up to 5 feet where you can start seeing that this, low-lying wetland area would also start to be inundated. So this is, again, just a screening level tool. You can't really use it to say at exactly 2.3 feet, X building is going to be impacted, but it is helpful to see what the potential impacts are to infrastructure. So what's coming? We will be able to implement dynamic rendering of sea level rise amounts. So I was showing you Kotlik. In 2080, we expect there to be 2.76 feet of sea level rise in Kotlik. But given our current mapping, you can only map 2.5 feet or 3 feet. However, once we have this newly implemented, you'll be able to put in 2.76 and see exactly what that looks like. Again, it's a screening level tool. It's not that exact, but you'll be able to see those exact levels, which will be helpful for folks. And then some other back-end mapping changes and some basically changes to health functionality and the user interface. And we'll update our resources to describe all that. And we have lots of technical support for this tool. Again, there's me and Dana. We love to get emails about Sea Level Rise Viewer and try to help folks use it in their community. And if the question is above our heads, we can pass it on to our inundation team, who are always really excited to answer questions about sea level rise. They worked on, there's a sea level rise technical report that came out in 2022. A lot of folks in our office worked on writing that report. So they are really sea level rise experts, much more so than I am, and they love to answer questions about how sea level rise will impact throughout the US. So we also, if anyone's really interested, we have a coastal inundation mapping training where we can have trainers come out and teach people how to, through lectures and GIS exercises, how to use vertical datums and elevation data to create inundation maps. So that's a pretty exciting thing that we can do.
Well, you got a good campus here.
I know.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Yeah. And then I just want to plug one last project. So our office is funding the production of 64 community infrastructure maps throughout the state. Dillingham actually is not on the list, but Clark's Point is, as are Togiak and Twin Hills, and a number of places in Bristol Bay region. So we're trying to basically update the DCRA maps that were done in the mid 2000s with new data so that folks can use that and with a more GIS friendly interface so people can download the data and use it more easily. Yeah. And here are our emails and contacts. Again, we would love to hear from anybody who's trying to use the tool. Help out with that. Oh, yeah.
We need a glossary.
That's fair. Hopefully that Alaska Resources webpage is a good glossary of the tools.
Are you guys planning on meeting with the city? You already?
No, we sent out some contacts, but yeah.
Tribe's here.
Tribe's here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I forgot to actually plug this also. A little Digital Coast book that talks about the Digital Coast team, and there will be a copy of this that lives with Tab at the campus here. So if you're ever interested in the kind of projects that our office has put on and funded, and you know the kind of work that we do, and you want to look at it in physical form, it's here.
And ANTHC is going to be organizing another kind of IGAP, you know, whatever, you know, with EPA. But I think you guys have presented in the past. If not, it used to be Oxenio Domin who was organizing those. Now she's, you know, pretty high level at EPA Region 10. But it's a lot to absorb, but you know, this would be a good.
Is it part of their like AtChem? Yeah.
You guys have
Yeah, I presented at AtChem this last year. Yeah.
What about AFE?
Yeah.
That would be beneficial.
Yeah, I presented on these tools at AFE as well. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Try to do that again. Our funding for travel for the next year is, you know, not certain yet.
You got 75 million, what are you talking about?
And PhD has that. We didn't work for that office.
So, yeah, and THC got quite a bit of money, but and this may not be directly relevant, but you know, now that Rich is working under Jackie, you know, so again, this goes back more to the erosion monitoring, and I think this is gonna be updating the quality assurance project plan, because you can use EPA money, and you gotta meet their requirements, but
For the stakes for stakeholders project?
yeah. Well, I mean, that was more specific to Bristol Bay, but you know, there's other communities around the state that, yeah.
For the ANTHC grant,
Yeah.
you said there was 140 communities identified?
140 are the communities they've identified as environmentally threatened. Of that, they're focusing on 100 for this work.
Okay.
Roughly 100, yeah.
And I imagine because BVNA got a grant, it wouldn't be Bristol Bay focused?
Yeah, it's not so Bristol Bay focused because
But unlike BBNA, you got Jackie, Rich, others going out in the field.
Yeah.
Which to me is really important.
yeah, and THC has a big focus on being on the ground doing the work with the communities, whereas the other two projects are like building the programs and capacity that can support that kind of work.
Yeah.
And that's why I always let you go a Buddha.
I'll plug one other thing is just that I've been working with Rich at ANTHC to update their they have a dashboard where you can see what data sets are available in certain communities and what kind of risk assessments and flood modeling, all these things that are just really useful to see, all the communities in Alaska, where is this work being done, who's producing it, how do I get access to it? And Rich and I are working to update that database right now. So
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because
Yeah,
I think the dashboard, again, I have no science background and I'm just, particularly when I was at BB&A, I was just good at writing grant proposals and then just predominantly work with Chignik now. But the dashboard seems like it might be easier for non-science focused, the people
yeah, and it has,
access than some of the science.
for sure. Yeah, and it has some mapping components. So if you're trying to write a grant and you want to see, which communities have LiDAR available right now and which don't, it's pretty easy to kind of have the website make that on the fly for you, and you can just download that and put that as a figure in your grant proposal. So that's part of what we're trying to make happen there. Yeah, thanks so much.